What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to use a font picker in your app. So here's an example that we've got that we'll put together. We've got a label with a standard font, and I can hit this button down here, and we get a font picker, and we're going to also learn how to customize this with a configuration. But if I come into here and I look for a different font, like we'll take a look at the symbol one here, and I select it, we see that all of our font changes here. So let's use something we can actually read. Maybe some of you can read that, but I definitely can't. Let's try maybe something. Let's use this one here. We can see the font changes. So we'll show how to put this together and give your users a flexibility to change their font. So if that sounds good, make sure you start by destroying the like button down below. Helps out tremendously. Hit subscribe if you're into iOS. Let's get into the video. Alright, let's begin by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with the app template under iOS, and let's go ahead and give this project a name of Font Picker. You want to make sure your language is Swift, your lifecycle is UIKit, and your interface is Storyboard. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. I'll toss it onto my desktop here. And first things first, as soon as Xcode decides to stop being slow, we'll go ahead and close this right panel, expand our Xcode window, and we're going to jump into our view controller. Let me just bump up this font size for everyone, and let's get into it. So a font picker controller, like you saw, can enable you to let your user pick a different font, whether it's for some text that they're entering or for a label or, whatever you want it to be. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to just create a label here, and we're going to use the font picker to enable us to change the font of this label. Now, all of this applies if you have like a text field or like a text view, but we'll just use a label for the sake of simplicity. So I'm going to go ahead and create a label. I'm also going to go ahead and just assign its text alignment to be center. And we're going to add some text in here by default. I'm just going to copy and paste something to make it nice and long. I'll say the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Pretty standard here. We'll go ahead and copy and paste this a few times so it's nice and long. And we also want to go ahead on the label and say number of lines is 0 here, so it'll go ahead and line wrap. Let's go ahead and add this to our view hierarchy by saying add subview label. We want to go ahead and make sure we override view to layout subview so we can assign a frame to the label. I'll go ahead and say it is CG rect, X is 10, Y is the safe area insets.top. The width will be the entire width of the screen, subtracting 20, so there's 10 points on each side. And this here will be, let's see, the views, frame size, height, subtracting the view safe area insets top as well as the view safe area insets bottom. And we're going to want to add a button to the bottom, which will allow the user to, basically select a different font. So we'll subtract an additional 100 to give us room to do that. So let's see, let's go ahead and give this guy a run, and let's make sure that we're actually seeing our label before we get into the font picker. So go ahead and pick a simulator of your choice and hit the run button here, and in your simulator you should hopefully see your app launch momentarily. Hopefully I picked the right simulator. There it goes, just built. And just bear with the simulator here. We should see a label with a bunch of text basically dead in the center of our UI here. And then we'll get into the UI font picker view controller. And this is actually a component that a lot of people don't really know about for whatever reason. I guess it's not as commonly needed, but it's pretty helpful based on whatever type of app you're building. So there is our font. It's a little small. We'll adjust that in a moment. But first things first, let's go ahead and add that button here to actually be able to pick a font. So I'm going to say private let button is going to be a UI button. We're going to go ahead in this block, and I'm just going to configure a pretty basic button. If you're not familiar with this pattern, it's called the anonymous closure pattern, and it's pretty popularly used. It makes your configuration of these components nice and clean. So we can go ahead and set a title for the button of pick a font for the normal state, and let's see, let's also set the title color here to white for normal. Let's go ahead and add this as a sub view, just like the label. We'll say add the button. And of course, we want to give the button a frame as well. So we'll say CG rect. And we want, once again, X, Y, width, and height. So we'll open this up and we'll stick with this one. So 20 from the left. The Y will be the entire height of the UI minus 100. And let's see, we also want to give it a frame, which will be the entire width minus 40. And the height we'll say is 50. Now we also want to attach a handler to our button here because we want to show the font picker when we tap on it. So I'll say add target self. The selector will be did tap pick on a font, pick font, just like that. And the event is going to be touch up inside. Now before I give it a run to make sure that we can actually see that button, let's go ahead and declare that function down here. And I'll also go ahead and set a default font on our label here. So we'll say its font is a system font by default of size maybe 24. So go ahead and give that a run, and let's make sure we see the label a little larger as well as a button at the bottom, which in fact we do. Awesome, so let's make this button do something. So how do you actually create a font picker controller? It's pretty simple. We're going to say VC is a UI font picker view controller. And you can create this controller like this, or you can pass in a configuration. So let's also talk about this configuration thing here. You can actually enable or disable if you want the picker to show different typefaces of a font. And what that means is, let's say you have a font like Times New Roman. Do you also want to show the italic and the bold versions of it? So let's create a config here. So we go ahead and say this is a UI font picker view controller dot configuration. You can instantiate it like that. And this has a typefaces property on it, I believe. Let's see if I can remember what it's actually called. I'm actually going to click into it and we're going to take a peek at the documentation right in here instead of guessing our way through it. So let's see what this has. So there's a include faces is what I'm looking for. So let's go and assign that. It is include faces. We're going to go ahead and say false in our case. And now that we've created this view controller, we can actually go ahead and simply present it. Now bear with me because we still need to hook up when we select a font what actually happens, because right now nothing's going to happen. So go ahead and tap on this and we actually see we get our font picker looking pretty awesome. And it even gives us a search box up here, which is pretty nice. So let's say I wanted to pick this bold font here, Arial rounded empty bold. If I click on it, it disappears, but what the heck happened? Our font didn't actually change. The reason it didn't change is because we need to use the delegate off of the view controller here to be informed of the selection. We need to conform to UI font picker view controller delegate. And I'm going to suspect that this has a font picker function. So there's font picker view controller did cancel, which is fine. All we want to do in the cancel case is say view controller. Go ahead and dismiss yourself with a animation. So we'll say completion is nil, animation is true. And then the other one is probably font picker view controller did select a font. So let's see what we got here. So did pick a font. So how do we actually get the font? So maybe we can say font. I assume it's off of the view controller. So we'll say view controller dot selected font descriptor. Interesting. So we have this on here, information about the font family or face selected by the user. So let's see what this actually is, because we don't have the exact font here. So let's see, there's a face, a family with a particular size. So it looks like we can actually derive a descriptor here from the particular selection. So what I'll go ahead and do for now is we are going to print out the font. We're also going to want to dismiss this view controller. So we'll say animated true. And let's actually click into here and let's see what the other options are to get the selected thing. So there's an initializer, there's a configuration, delegate, and there's a selected font descriptor, which is what we're using. And if you're not familiar with what a UI font descriptor is, you can just click into it and kind of see, like what it is. And let's see, so there's a point size in here. So basically this is something that describes a font, hence the name. Now, I actually haven't used a font descriptor in a long time, so we'll see if I can remember how to actually apply it. But let's go ahead and give this a run, and let's at least make sure that we're getting the font printed out. So I'll come back here, I'll go ahead and click into this, and I'm gonna hit this bold font here. And we get this printed out here. It's a UI font descriptor, and it tells us it's Arial, round, empty, bold. So let's see, this is a font family attribute. So what I assume we want to do is say label.font, and I don't think we can assign this directly to the font descriptor. What we probably want to do is create a UI font with a descriptor. Perfect, so this takes in a font descriptor. So let's go ahead and change this to be a descriptor. We can get rid of the print here. And for this, we can pass in the descriptor directly. Notice the descriptor doesn't actually have a size associated with it. So what we'll go ahead and do is this like so. And let's see why this is yelling at us. A value of optional. It's an optional descriptor, so we'll need to go ahead and unwrap this here. Basically, if the user didn't actually select something, presumably. And once we've unwrapped it, hopefully that error will go away and we should be in business. So let's go ahead and give this a run. And what you'll notice is we'll go ahead and start off with the default font. We'll come into here, we'll pick this nice and bold font, and boom, our text has bolded. We can take a look at that one more time with maybe a different font. So this one is like these symbols here, so that'll be obvious once it changes. You might want to also allow your user to select a font size. We've hard-coded it to 24, both down here and up here. But nevertheless, this is an awesome way to allow your user to customize stuff. So a great use case that I've used this for is if you're building like a social media app or some type of app where the user inputs text and you want to let them customize, their particular profile or page, you can let them, select a font and you can save that font in your database or, wherever you're saving stuff. And that way they can really change the look and feel. So, it gives them that extra, open customization option if they so choose to use it. So that is all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like down below. Helps out so much. Hit subscribe if you're into iOS and haven't done so already. And definitely let me know in the comments, what do you guys want to see next? Do you plan to use this view controller? And in general, I'd love to hear feedback from you guys, or if you just want to say hi, I try to reply to every single comment in a reasonable amount of time. So definitely don't hesitate to ping me in the comments down below. So thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.